What's good? What's good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of The Urban Platform Speaks. Make sure to like and subscribe as you tune into the channel. Check out the content. And with that being said, man, I want to speak on this Chris Paul situation. As you know, the Clippers sent Chris Paul home, and there- there's some things that people they're not really touching on, right? And I'm not surprised that the Clippers let Chris Paul go and they sent him home. Chris Paul, like throughout his career, Chris Paul has been somebody who's known to be hard to get along with. And I made other videos about this before. His relationship with Andre Ayton when they was in Phoenix, right? That relationship wasn't all that good. Then he had relationships with DeAndre Jordan, uh, Blake Griffin. Those they didn't really get along with him. James Harden, now and even players that didn't play on his team, like he got into it with Patrick Beverly at one time. Then he got into it with who's the guy? Rajon Rondo, right? So around the league, people know that Chris Paul is the kind of guy that is they I mean, he's hard to get along with at times. He's hard to get along with. So that the fact that like that you can get away with that if you are if you're producing on the court. You can get away with that if you're producing like in late in the season in the playoffs and stuff like that. You can do that, but when you're on a losing team, then you can't really, that's not going to fly, especially at the end of your career, right? And now, so what was the guy? Lou Williams on running back was a little he was kind of upset and kind of pissed off at the organization for letting Chris Paul go, because they said, he felt like they should have held on to him because this is his last year and he want to retire. And so he wanted, to be able to go out, do his retirement tour and everything and just go out in a classy way, right? But it didn't work out like that because, Chris Paul, rubbed some people the wrong way. He rubbed players the wrong way. They say he rubbed, the coach Ty Lue and people in the front office, right? So I want to listen to what's the guy name? Lou Williams had to say, and then I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna give some more input into how what's the truth about how these situations really go and why guys don't really, like a lot of professional players don't get it. They think that because you're productive on the court, that that's your leverage. And every time they feel like that, they come up short, and stuff like this happens. So let's listen to Lou Williams, and then I'm gonna come back and give my input.
You were on it, which, by the way, weird hours. And you immediately got on the text thread and said, I guess we're changing up the whole show because in the night, the Clippers announced that Chris Paul is no longer with the team. They're parting ways. He also posted a very sort of cryptic short post as well. In a statement, Lawrence Frank said, quote, "We are parting ways with Chris, and he is no longer on the team. We will work with him on the next step of his career." He also emphasized that no one is blaming Chris for the Clippers' struggles. Keep in mind, they're out there in Atlanta to play the Hawks later on today. Lou, I'm going to start with you. You're our guy when it comes to all things Clippers. What the hell just happened, sir?
Yeah, just talking to a few different people over there and just trying to understand what transpired in the early morning hours of this team being in Atlanta. But from what I've gathered, that brought an end to this abruptly was there was a few scenarios, and which CP was holding people accountable from players to staff, from coaching staff up to the front office. And, from what I understand, there was a situation where he even addressed the team and apologized and said, look, my criticisms are coming from a good place. I want us to be a good team. I want us to get this thing right. And he was just holding guys accountable. Now, how?
All right, so Lou Williams said accountable 2 times, right? The first person that Chris Paul should have been holding accountable should have been himself. Like, why would he have an attitude and feel like he can hold somebody else accountable when he is not at this stage in his career? He's not even the player that he used to be, right? So, and so they just see that as hypocritical. You holding somebody accountable, you holding management and coaches and players accountable when you are not even, you can't contribute to the team in a way that's going to make the team successful. So, and it's not like you're the coach and you get the bark at players, or it's not like you're the general manager, you get the bark at the coach. You are a player. So how can you hold anybody accountable? And that is how that's the way Chris Paul has been throughout his career. Just really just barking at other players and really just being obnoxious when you're trying to tell somebody or get somebody to do something that you can't do. And so this has been an issue with Chris Paul throughout his career, and this time it backfired on him.
How some of that talk was taken or interpreted, that's up for the players and the coaching staff that was involved and how they felt about it. And then down the line, there was another scenario where he was critical of front office as well, and I think that was the one that broke the camel's back. That was the straw that broke the camel's back when he had some criticisms for the front office as well. I think that's what brought this to a head in the early hours in Atlanta. Like I said, I'm in Atlanta. The Clippers are in Atlanta. It was about 3-something in the morning. For whatever reason, I was up, but I was up, and and that's what I was understood. But for a player who's gonna go down as a Hall of Famer, for somebody who's gonna possibly have the opportunity to be the first jersey retired in the Raptors over there at the Intuit Dome, and be the first to represent Lob City and be the first person to represent the Clippers in that manner. This is just a sour way to go out. It looks bad on the Clippers' part to do this in the late night hours. It looks bad for Chris Paul. It looks bad for all parties involved. And I'll let you guys get in there a little bit. But this is another L. Frank thing. When a team is playing bad, when you're losing, and Boogie can attest to this, Chandler can attest to this, everybody's talking trash. Everybody got something to say in the locker room when teams are losing. And, when you – uh-oh.
Y'all leave us. Yeah, we got
you. My thing was saying that it was muted. But, these guys know, listen, when you're losing, everybody's talking trash. Everybody got something to say, and everybody is being critical of the scenario at hand. So if that's the only thing that Chris Paul was guilty of at this point in his career, he deserves to have something to say. And this is not.
See, that's where you make your mistake, like that entitlement. Like Chris Paul felt entitled, like he could say whatever he want, when that's not always the case. Like I said, if you're producing out on the court, then people going to give you a little bit more leeway, right? And they're going to put up with that. But once you can't produce, once you can't help the team be successful on the court, then they don't want to hear that. Like his minutes was cut because he wasn't as he couldn't be productive. So people not trying to hear that. And one thing that people is not talking about, like, and people want to get into Lawrence Frank. I think Lawrence Frank is the general manager of the Clippers. And people expect general managers to show loyalty to Chris Paul. But you got to remember, Chris Paul played for like 5 different teams. So the Clippers don't have any loyalty for him. He played for the Clippers. He played for, he played in New Orleans. He played for Houston. He played for the Spurs. Let me see. Did he play in Brooklyn? He played at OKC. That's 5. So you don't have, like, how can you play for all these different teams and then expect to have some loyalty there? There's no loyalty. Like, people see, he don't have not even a loyal fan base. He probably had fans. I'm not saying that. But like, what fan base is he connected to? It's not like he spent his whole career in LA. He had some good in Phoenix. That's 6 teams I just named, right? So he played in all these different for all these different teams. So his fan base is fractured. So if Lawrence Frank do something like what he just did, got rid of Chris Paul, sent Chris Paul home, he don't have to worry about pissing off the Clippers fan base, because he don't the Clipper fan base is kind of not really all that connected to him, because he has been all over the place, and he has a fractured loyalty. Now, say for instance, if he was somebody like Joe Dumars or Isaiah Thomas, like those guys, when coaches and general managers get rid of those kind of players or run those kind of guys out of town, they have to think about how this is going to affect the fan base. But not with Chris Paul, because Chris Paul don't have any, he's not connected he's not connected to any one fan base. Even in Philadelphia, like when you think about Allen Iverson, and that guy was, I think his name was Croce. I forgot his first name, but he was the team owner. Him and Allen Iverson, sometimes they had a good relationship, but sometimes, Allen Iverson used to piss him off. And, a few times they spoke about trading Allen Iverson, but they had to really, really consider like how that will affect the fan base. You gotta soften that kind of blow up for the fan base. They put it out there, see how the fan base react, and get them used to the idea. And once Allen Iverson got older, then they sent him to the Denver Nuggets, right? But Chris Paul, they didn't have to worry about that. Like, no team that has Chris Paul at the end of their career, at the end of his career, has to worry about how sending him home, cutting him, or getting rid of him, how it's going to affect the fan base. Because Chris Paul don't have loyal fans like somebody like an Allen Iverson. And another example, what's the guy name? Jerry Krause in Chicago. That he really pissed that fan base off when he didn't renew Phil Jackson contract, and then Michael Jordan left. That fan base was pissed off, right? And when he passed and the organization wanted to honor him, his wife was there, and as soon as they mentioned his name, the whole stadium or the whole arena just booed. They booed him so hard that his wife started crying, right? And so now he probably don't care. The guy Ronstaff probably would not have cared if he had been still alive. But it was a sad moment for his wife, because she came thinking that they were going to honor him. But when he pissed off the fan base, and the fan base remembered that he broke up that team, and they made her pay for what he did. And so general managers, general managers do consider like how this is going to affect this fan base. That's why the guy Nico is not he's not with the Mavericks anymore, because that fan base did not, once Anthony Davis got hurt, and then their team, the Mavericks, got off to a slow start, Nico had to go. He put himself in a position where as though he had to hit a home run, because Cooper Flag looks good, but you don't have Anthony Davis there. You don't have, Kyrie Irving back yet. So, Nico had to go. But if everything had fell in place, Nico would have been good, because then you would have had this kid, Cooper Flag, playing at I don't know, he might get the Rookie of the Year, but they would have still had a good team. So Chris Paul don't have that kind of leverage, because he's always been moving around from team to team. I just named 6 teams that Chris Paul played for, right? And so, like I said, his fan base is fractured, and and now you have players like Pat Beverly and other players, speaking up and say Chris Paul's a nuisance, and so they and if they know that, the league already, you don't think that Lawrence Frank, they didn't know, like what would be the pushback. They were like, man, people don't like Chris Paul, no way. So it wasn't a gamble on their part. And so, you know, this is what happens when you move around from team to team and you don't really have any leverage. Like once you are, and this is a thing for like diva wide receivers and diva players in general. Once you can no longer perform for the team, they're gonna get you out of there. And they're gonna get you out of there in a way that's going to be embarrassing. Where they're gonna embarrass you the way they move you out of there because they don't care, because the fan base is not going to react. Look at the end of Terrell Owens' career. Like Terrell Owens is begging for teams to let him try out and all this other stuff. They don't care about Terrell Owens, man. Um, so and players don't think about, like, when you are in a position of, when you have leverage, it's good to build bridges and build relationships so that by the time you get to the end of your career, by the time your career is over, then you're able to phase into, you go into that next stage like seamlessly, right? Without no issues or anything like this. If Chris Paul was in, if he had played for the Clippers for his entire career, they went to a championship and they lost like he did in Phoenix, then they might have showed him a little bit more respect, because the fan base would react to him differently. But Chris Paul played, like I say, played for 6 different teams. Fans like loyalty, you know, and they like that connection, but they want to feel like they are special. And if you had 5 other teams that you play for, then you are not. They don't see you, like, they don't see the relationship between Chris Paul and the fan base as special, because the same things that Chris Paul did with the Clippers, he did it with Phoenix. And the same things he did with Phoenix, he did it in Houston. And he was in New Orleans, he was in Charlotte. So because he moved around, that's like if you get married to a woman and she had 4 other husbands before you, like, what makes your relationship special? So it is not, whether people want to believe it or not. It's just not. So that's what Chris Paul is. That's the situation with Chris Paul. He just didn't have any leverage as far as that fan base is concerned. But that's my take on it. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Also, don't forget to leave a comment, and I'll check you all out in the next video. Peace.